Hey guys, tonight we slip into the smoky, skeletal remains of a building that was once the heart of a city. We're talking about a fire so intense it turned brick to dust and memories to ash. A crime that seemed open and shut until a detective with 4 paws and an incredibly trained nose decided to rewrite the entire script. It's a story about how the smallest, most overlooked clue can burn brighter than any flame. And a fair warning, with the way this one unfolds, you probably shouldn't be listening to this alone. The shadows in your room might start looking a little suspicious. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support is what keeps these late night stories coming. When you're done, drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always cool to see how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The call comes in just before 3 a.m., a shrill interruption to the city's quiet hum. You see it before you hear the address. A malevolent orange glow pulses against the low-hanging clouds, a false dawn promising nothing but destruction. By the time your boots hit the pavement, the Phoenix Theater is already a lost cause. Flames pour from the collapsed roof like a volcano, and the air, thick with the smell of wet ash and melted plastic, crackles with the sound of a dying giant. For 100 years, this place hosted sold-out shows, first dates, and grand farewells. Tonight, its final act is a tragedy performed for an audience of weary firefighters and flashing red and blue lights. You're Detective Harding, a man who has seen too many fires to find them romantic or mysterious. To you, they're just messy, complicated puzzles where half the pieces have been incinerated. Arson cases are the worst. They destroy their own evidence, and the motive is almost always the same boring sin: greed. You stand across the street, the heat warming your face even from 100 feet away, and you've already got the story sketched out in your head. The theater's owner, Alistair Finch, is neck-deep in debt. The landmark is insured for a small fortune. It doesn't take a genius to connect those dots. Another scumbag trying to trade a piece of history for a pile of cash. Hours later, as the sun rises on a scene of skeletal remains and steaming rubble, you get the all-clear to step inside. The grand lobby is now a swamp of black water and debris. The plush velvet seats are waterlogged, charred husks. You navigate carefully toward the main stage, where the fire chief points out the deepest charring, the classic V pattern climbing up what's left of a wall. The fire's point of origin, its textbook. You're already thinking about lab reports and financial records, the dry procedural work that follows the initial spectacle. That's when the fire chief, a good man named O'Malley, claps a hand on your shoulder. Harding, we're bringing in a specialist, state level. They'll be here in 20. You nod, expecting some hotshot investigator from the state capitol with a fancy toolkit and an even fancier title. What you get is a pristine white SUV from the fire marshal's office. A young woman in a crisp uniform steps out. She looks barely old enough to order a drink, let alone work a major arson scene. And right behind her, hopping out of the back with a soft jingle of tags, is a golden brown Labrador. You have to stop yourself from groaning out loud. A dog. They brought a dog. Detective Harding, I'm Fire Marshal Maya Chen. This is my partner, Ember. Ember, the accelerant detection canine, looks up at you with soulful brown eyes and gives a gentle tail wag. You see a PR stunt, a photo op for the evening news. You've always trusted your gut, your eyes and hard data, not the twitching nose of an animal. But you can't exactly tell the fire marshal to take her dog and go home. You just grunt, right, a dog. Chen seems unfazed by your cynicism. She explains that Ember can detect trace amounts of accelerants, gasoline, paint thinner, lighter fluid, far beyond the capabilities of any human or machine. Her nose is the most sophisticated chemical sensor on the planet. An alert from her is what establishes probable cause to collect a sample, which is then sent to the lab for official confirmation. It's a standard and often case-making procedure. Still, you're a skeptic. As Chen gears Ember up in her work vest, you notice an odd little ritual. The dog gently nudges Chen's palm with her nose. Once, twice, 3 times. "She's clocking in," she says with a small smile, as if it's the most normal thing in the world. You just roll your eyes. You point them toward the stage. "The origin is over there. If your partner is as good as you say, she'll find something in that V pattern. Let's not waste time anywhere else." But here's where the story you wrote in your head begins to unravel. Chen gives the command, a soft "seek," and Ember's demeanor changes. The friendly pet disappears, replaced by a focused, methodical investigator. Her nose drops to the ground, twitching, sampling the air. And then she does something that makes your jaw tighten. She completely ignores the stage. She trots right past the burn zone you so confidently identified, pulling Chen along on the leash as if the epicenter of the fire is nothing more than a mild curiosity. You follow, a mix of annoyance and intrigue bubbling in your gut. This is precisely the kind of time-wasting nonsense you expected. Ember leads the two of you away from the auditorium, past the ruined concession stand, and down a long hallway that suffered only minor smoke damage. The air here is cold, the smell of burnt wood replaced by the scent of stale popcorn and damp plaster. It feels like a dead end. This area is 100 feet from where the fire started, and yet Ember stops. She plants her feet in front of a drab, gray metal filing cabinet. It's unscorched, undented, and utterly unremarkable. She sniffs intently at the bottom drawer, then sits, rodman straight, and looks back at Chen. Her tail gives a single, decisive thump against the wet floor. It's a passive alert, calm, confident, and utterly baffling. There in a corner of the building the fire barely touched, a dog is telling you the secret to the whole case is locked inside a cold steel box. You stare at the dog, then at the filing cabinet, then back at the dog. A silent, furry accusation aimed at a piece of office furniture. Your first instinct is to dismiss it. A fluke. Maybe the dog smells a dead mouse trapped underneath. You cross your arms, your patience wearing thin. "Chen," you say, the word clipped. "The fire was 100 feet that way. Are you telling me your dog thinks the arsonist stopped here for a coffee break?" Chen doesn't flinch. She trusts Ember implicitly. "My partner is telling me that the chemical signature of a flammable accelerant is strongest right here, detective. Stronger than anywhere else we've passed, including the point of origin." She runs a gloved hand over the top of the cabinet, leaving a clean swipe in the thin layer of soot. The fire might have started over there, but the fuel for it? It might have been stored right here. It's a theory, you'll give her that, but it feels flimsy. Still, procedure is procedure. You radio for a pry bar. While you wait, you watch Chen reward Ember. She pulls a small toy from her vest pocket and engages the dog in a quick, quiet game of tug-of-war. The transformation is immediate. The focused investigator becomes a happy, playful lab again. Chen murmurs praises. "Good girl, Emmy, good girl." It's a bizarre scene. A tiny island of normalcy in a sea of destruction. You see it as coddling. Chen sees it as essential maintenance for her highly trained partner. The pry bar arrives. With a grunt and a screech of protesting metal, you force the top drawer open. It's filled with what you'd expect. Hanging folders, neatly labeled. Ticket sales, 2018. Vendor invoices, marketing budgets. Nothing. You pop the next drawer. More of the same. Old programs, promotional flyers, employee records. You can feel a smug "I told you so" forming on your lips. Then you get to the bottom drawer, the one Ember was so sure about. You yank it open, and it's a chaotic mess. Loose papers, dried up pens, a stapler, and half a dozen dusty binders. It's the junk drawer. You rummage through it, the metal groaning. Nothing. No gas can, no suspicious rags, no telltale chemical smell. Just years of accumulated office clutter. You stand up, wiping your dusty hands on your pants. "Well, that was a bust. Your dog smells paper." Chen kneels down, undeterred. Ember doesn't alert on paper, detective. Her voice is calm, almost clinical. She begins to lift the contents out, one by one, placing them carefully on the floor. She isn't just looking, she's feeling, smelling, observing with a focus you have to begrudgingly respect. She gets to the very bottom, under a stack of old theater playbills. And there it is. Not a weapon, not a can of gasoline. It's a blue canvas apron, the kind of janitor or stagehand might wear, rolled up tightly and tucked into the back corner. It looks perfectly clean. You scoff. An apron, that's your smoking gun. She lets see. She unrolls it carefully. To your eyes, it's just an old apron, but Chen holds it up, her own nose twitching slightly. She still can't smell what the dog can, but she trusts the alert. As she lays it flat, something small and metallic falls out of the front pocket and clinks softly on the concrete floor. You both lean in. It's a single cufflink, antique silver, tarnished with age. It's ornate, with the initial G engraved in a swirling old-fashioned script. Finch's first name is Alistair. This doesn't fit. It's a strange, out-of-place detail, an orphan in the narrative of the crime. You pick it up with the gloved finger and bag it. An oddity, but maybe irrelevant. Chen, meanwhile, is focused on the apron. This is where her strict training kicks in, a process that forms the bedrock of canine accelerant detection cases in court. She retrieves a new, sterile, empty 1-gallon paint can from her kit. She explains that fabric, like this apron, is the perfect vessel for trapping volatile fumes. Bagging it in plastic would allow the chemicals to leach out and contaminate the sample. The airtight metal can, however, creates a sealed environment. When it gets to the lab, technicians will heat the can, causing the trapped chemicals to release into the headspace, which they can then sample with a syringe for analysis. It's a brilliant, simple piece of forensic science. Her methodical process is a silent rebuke to your earlier skepticism. While she works, she addresses your doubt. Experts still argue whether dogs are smelling the primary accelerant, like the gasoline itself, or the unique pyrolytic catalytic byproducts created when a specific accelerant reacts with the material it's burning on. Something the dog's nose is so sensitive, it can differentiate between gasoline burned on carpet versus gasoline burned on wood. For Ember to alert here, so far from the heat, it means she's likely smelling the raw, unburnt fuel source, which has soaked deep into these fibers. The source, not the fire. The cufflink is weird, the dog's alert is weird, but your gut still screams that this all leads back to the owner, Alistair Finch. Maybe the apron is his, maybe he borrowed it. You're still building your case, and every piece of evidence has to be examined through the lens of his presumed guilt. You get on your phone and tell your partner at the station to pull everything on Finch, his financials, his known associates, his ex-wife, everything. You also tell him to find out who wore a janitor's uniform at the theater. Just as Chen seals the paint can and labels it with the date, time, and location, your radio crackles. It's the fire chief. Harding, you need to see this, back of the stage. You and Chen walk back toward the origin point, the air growing warmer and thicker. Behind the remnants of the main curtain, a firefighter points his flashlight at the floor. There, half melted into the scorched floorboards, is a small, disposable butane lighter, the kind you buy at any gas station. It's exactly what you'd expect to find. A simple, cheap tool for a simple, greedy crime. For a moment, it feels right. The lighter here, the accelerant starting here, it all fits. But then you get a call. It's the lab. They've rushed the sample from the apron. It's a courtesy to the fire marshal's office. You got a hit, the tech says. Positive for accelerant. You feel a flash of triumph. Gasoline? You ask. A pause. Negative, the tech replies. It's a complex solvent, a custom blend of nitromethane, methanol, and a stabilizing agent. Stuff we see sometimes in professional motorsports or as a high-temperature industrial cleaner. Definitely not something you buy at the hardware store. Suddenly, the cheap lighter on the floor feels like a red herring, a deliberate plant. And the insignificant apron in the metal can, discovered by a dog you'd written off, just became the most important and most confusing piece of evidence in the entire case. You're standing in the cold, gray light of an interrogation room, the smell of stale coffee hanging in the air. Across the table sits Alistair Finch, the owner of the now gutted Phoenix Theater. He looks exactly how you'd pictured him. Expensive suit, a watch that costs more than your car, and an air of weary entitlement. He's been answering questions for 2 hours, his story smooth and practiced. He was at home, asleep. His wife can corroborate. No, he has no enemies. Yes, the business was struggling, but it was a historic landmark. He would never. The performance is flawless. You let the silence stretch. placing a small evidence bag on the table between you. Inside is the silver cufflink with the letter G on it. Finch glances at it. A flicker of something, recognition, surprise, in his eyes before his mask of calm slides back into place. "Ever seen this before, Alistair?" you ask, your voice flat. "No, I can't say I have. It's not mine. My initials are AF." You push the bag a little closer. "It was found in the pocket of an apron tucked away in a filing cabinet in your theater. An apron that tested positive for a very unique accelerant, the kind that burned your business to the ground." Finch leans back, steepling his fingers. "Detective, dozens of people have worked in that theater over the years. Stagehands, janitors, volunteers. That could belong to anyone. It's certainly not mine." He's smooth, unshakable. The cufflink is a dead end with him. Your partner slides a file across the table. Finch's financials. It's a horror story. The theater was bleeding money. He'd remortgaged his home, taken out high-interest loans, and was just weeks away from defaulting on payments that would trigger a bankruptcy clause with his investors. The insurance policy, however, was recently updated. The new payout? A cool $10 million. A classic, almost cliché insurance fraud motive. $10 million, Alistair, you say. That's a hell of a safety net. Enough to solve all your problems and then some. "It's a historical building, detective," he counters, his voice laced with indignation. "The replacement value is astronomical. The insurance figure is standard for a property of that significance. It's not a motive, it's responsible ownership." He has an answer for everything. The financials are damning, but motive alone isn't a conviction. The real legal hurdle in any arson case for fraud is proving exclusive opportunity. You can't just show that the owner benefited, you have to prove he, or a proxy, was the only one who could have set the fire. Finch had keys. He knew the layout. He had the motive. But so did several other employees. And his alibi, for now, is holding. You switch gears, returning to the strange evidence. This accelerant we found. It's a custom chemical blend, not exactly something you pick up at the corner store. We're tracing the components. One of them is nitromethane, the primary ingredient in high-performance racing fuel. You watch him for a reaction, and for the first time, you get one. A genuine crack in the facade. Finch pales slightly. "Racing fuel?" he repeats, the words barely a whisper. "That's right." "Ring any bells?" He shakes his head, but his eyes betray him. He's lying. There's a connection there, and he knows it, but he won't give it up. The interview ends. You know he's involved. You can feel it in your bones. But the case against him is all circumstantial. The motive is strong, but the physical evidence, the weird accelerant, the cufflink, doesn't point directly to him. It points away. Back at the precinct, you, Chen, and your partner are staring at a whiteboard covered in scribbled notes and arrows that lead nowhere. Chen has been quiet, listening. Now she speaks. "The dog led us away from the primary burn zone for a reason. Ember didn't just find the accelerant, she found where it was staged. The arsonist wasn't a firebug who gets a thrill from the flames. This was calculated. They brought the fuel in, stored it somewhere safe and out of the way, and then deployed it." You pace in front of the board. So Finch hires a pro, someone who knows how to handle exotic chemicals, but why the elaborate plan? Why not just splash some gasoline around and toss a match? Why use a fuel that's so specific, it's practically a signature? It's an open debate among arson investigators. Why do some criminals use overly complex or signature methods when a simpler one would do? Some experts argue it's pure ego, a belief that their cleverness will outsmart law enforcement. Others suggest it's a matter of convenience. They use what's available to them, what's in their garage or workplace. A third theory posits that it's a form of misdirection, a false flag designed to point investigators towards a specific but incorrect conclusion. Maybe the racing fuel is meant to make you look for a race car driver, not a desperate theater owner. Your partner, Detective Miller, has been digging into the theater's employee files. He tosses a folder on the table. Found something on the cufflink. Remember how Finch's father owned the theater before him? His name was George Finch, initial G. A jolt goes through you. George. The G on the cufflink. When did he pass away? He didn't, Miller says, flipping a page. He's alive and well, living in a high-end retirement community in Florida. Handed the business over to Alistair about 10 years ago. It's another bizarre twist. Why would Alistair Finch be carrying around his father's cufflink in the pocket of an apron used to start a fire? Is it sentimental? Was it a plant? It's a piece of the puzzle that simply refuses to fit. Just then, Chen, who has been quietly scrolling through something on her tablet, lets out a soft "oh." All eyes turn to her. She's not looking at case files. She's been running background checks on every employee and major contractor associated with the Phoenix Theater for the last 20 years. It's a long shot, a search for anyone with a connection to either chemistry or motorsports. I think I found your race car driver, she says, turning the tablet toward you. The screen shows a man in his late 40s, smiling in a photo. His name is Samuel Jones. He was a part-time lighting technician at the Phoenix for 6 months, laid off 2 years ago during one of Finch's budget cuts. Before that, for nearly a decade, he was a semi-professional drag racer. And the kicker? His last known address is a garage on the industrial side of town, a garage that, according to city permits, is licensed for automotive repair and the storage of chemical solvents. Suddenly, the whole case pivots. The strange accelerant isn't a red herring, it's a breadcrumb. It wasn't about misdirection, it was about using what was familiar. And it doesn't point to the man with the $10 million motive, it points to a disgruntled ex-employee with a very specific and very dangerous skill set. Finch's story, as flimsy as it seemed, might actually be true. He didn't set the fire, but maybe, just maybe, he paid someone who could. The question is, can you prove it?
The lead on Samuel Jones, the ex-lighting tech and drag racer, feels like the first solid piece of ground you've stood on since the fire. It's a tangible connection between the crime scene and the real person. Something more concrete than a mountain of dead and a suspicious insurance policy. But a hunch doesn't get you a search warrant. You need more. You need to connect Jones not just to the chemical, but to the location. This is where Chen and Ember step back into the spotlight. U.S. Chen, this scent, how long does it last? Could Ember pick it up outside the theater? Chen explains the science of scent persistence. It depends on the substance, the surface, and the environmental conditions. A volatile chemical like nitromethane is tricky. Sunlight degrades it, rain washes it away. But in a protected area, shielded from the elements, a scent trail could linger for days, maybe even a week. It's a long shot, a tactic more common in missing person cases and arson. But your case against Finch is stalled, and Jones is just the name in a file. You're running out of options, so you find yourself, once again, following a dog. You return to the Phoenix Theater, but this time you don't go inside. You start at the back, near the service entrance, the most likely entry and exit point for an arsonist trying to avoid detection. The area is a grimy alleyway, littered with overflowing dumpsters and smelling of stagnant water. It's a sensory nightmare for a human, a complex library of odors for a canine. Chen presents Ember with the sealed evidence can containing the apron. She lets the dog get a good, long sniff, reinforcing the target scent. This is a critical step in a real-world scent tracking investigation known as a scent article. You have to give the dog an uncontaminated sample of the exact scent you want them to find. Giving them a contaminated item or the wrong item could send them on a wild goose chase. Seek, Chen commands, her voice low and steady. Ember's nose goes down and she begins to work, quartering the ground in a zigzag pattern. She ignores the dumpsters, the discarded food, the oil stains. Her focus is absolute. You watch, still a skeptic at heart, but willing to be convinced. For 10 minutes, it seems like a bust. Ember sniffs along the base of the brick wall, circles a drain pipe, and shows little interest. Miller is already shaking his head, ready to call it. Then Ember stops. She's standing over a storm drain grates about 30 feet from the theater's back door. Her tail goes rigid. Her body tenses. She gives a short, sharp woof, a different alert than the passive sit she used inside. Chen explains this is her trace evidence alert, for scents that are faint or scattered. Ember is telling you the scent was here and its strongest right at this spot. You get a crowbar and pry the heavy iron grate open. The smell that wafts up is foul, a mix of sewage and decay. But you shine a high-powered flashlight down into the muck. At first, you see nothing but sludge and debris. Then, a flash of color. Wedged against the concrete side of the drain, just above the waterline, is a pair of black work gloves. They look new, too new to have been here for long. Carefully, you retrieve them using a pair of evidence tongs. They're heavy-duty, chemical-resistant gloves, the kind someone would wear if they were handling a caustic, custom-blended accelerant. You bag them. It's a huge break, but it's still circumstantial. You need to tie the gloves to Jones. But Ember isn't finished. After a quick reward, that same silly tug toy, which seems to completely recharge her batteries, she's back on the hunt. She moves past the drain, sniffing her way down the alley. She leads you to the mouth of the alley where it opens onto a side street. And there, on the asphalt, she alerts again. A frantic, excited sniffing of one specific spot on the curb. You look down. You see nothing but blacktop and a few dark oil stains. What is it, you ask Chen? I'm not sure, she says, kneeling beside the dog. The scent is here. It's where the trail goes cold. It's frustrating. It feels like another dead end. But as you're about to pack it in, you notice something odd. One of the oil stains isn't like the others. It's not iridescent like motor oil, and it's not as black. It's a faint, dark discoloration on the pavement, almost invisible unless you're looking for it. A chemical spill. You take a swab, hoping the lab can work a miracle. Hours later, the lab calls. The gloves are a gold mine. The inside is loaded with DNA, awaiting a comparison to Jones. The outside, saturated with the same nitromethane methanol cocktail found on the apron. You finally have a direct link between the accelerant and the physical object a person wore. Then comes the report on the swab from the street. The faint stain was indeed the accelerant, but it was mixed with something else, a transmission fluid. But not just any transmission fluid. It was a specific high-performance synthetic brand favored for its high-temperature stability. It's a niche product, not the kind of thing you find in your average family sedan. The pieces are slamming into place. Jones uses a unique fuel. He drives a vehicle that uses a unique transmission fluid. He leaves traces of both at the scene of the crime. This is the evidence you need. You get the warrant. The team hits Samuel Jones's garage at dawn. It's a greasy, cluttered space filled with tools, car parts, and the sharp smell of oil and solvents. In the corner, under a dusty tarp, is a souped-up vintage muscle car, clearly a work in progress. And on the workbench, next to a half-eaten sandwich, is a container of high-performance transmission fluid, the same brand the lab identified. But Jones is gone. The place is empty. The half-eaten sandwich suggests he left in a hurry. You realize he must have been watching the news. Once the fire at the Phoenix became a major story, he knew it was only a matter of time. You're about to call it in when you spot it. Tucked away on a shelf is a small framed photo. It's a picture of a younger Samuel Jones, grinning, his arm around another man. The other man is wearing a Phoenix Theater staff polo shirt. He's older, with a severe face and a look of stern disapproval even in a candid photo. You recognize him from the employee files. It's David O'Connell, the theater's longtime stage manager, the man Finch fired 6 months ago for alleged theft. This case just got a lot more complicated. Jones wasn't just a random ex-employee with a grudge. He had a friend on the inside. Or maybe an accomplice. Was this a joint venture? A revenge plot cooked up by two bitter fired employees? The motive is no longer simple greed or singular revenge. It's a potential conspiracy. The fire was set with racing fuel, but the real engine of the crime might have been a shared, burning resentment.
The discovery of the photo in Samuel Jones's garage changes the entire dynamic of the investigation. It's no longer a straight line from accelerant to arsonist. Now, you have a fork in the road leading to a second person of interest, David O'Connell, the disgraced former stage manager. The man fired for stealing. His name had come up early on, but he was dismissed as a petty thief with a grudge, not a potential arsonist. Now, his connection to your primary suspect, Jones, makes him a central figure. You pull O'Connell's file. He worked at the Phoenix for 25 years, a fixture of the place. He was known for being meticulous, controlling, and fiercely protective of the theater. His termination was messy. Alistair Finch accused him of skimming cash from ticket sales and stealing stage equipment. O'Connell denied it vehemently, claiming Finch was manufacturing a reason to fire him and replace him with someone younger and cheaper. It was a classic he said situation, and without hard proof, the police weren't involved. Finch simply fired him. O'Connell left under a cloud of suspicion, his long career ending in disgrace. You find David O'Connell living in a small, run-down apartment across town. When you knock, he answers the door looking defeated. He's a man in his late 50s, but he looks 70. The fire has gone out of his eyes. He doesn't seem surprised to see you. He invites you in. The apartment is obsessively neat, a stark contrast to the chaos of Jones's garage. Old theater posters adorn the walls, mementos from a life that was taken from him. He sits at his small kitchen table and tells a story. His voice is flat, tired. He talks about his friendship with Sam Jones. Sam's a good kid, a bit of a hothead, but his heart's in the right place. We used to work on his car together. He loved that thing. You press him about the fire. We know Jones set the fire, David. We have evidence linking him to the scene. The question is, did you help him? Was this about getting back at Finch for what he did to you? O'Connell shakes his head slowly. I hated what Alistair did to me. He ruined my name. But I love that theater. It was my life. I would never, ever burn it. You have to believe me. There is a strange sincerity in his voice, but then every suspect claims innocence. You show him a photo of the silver cufflink with the initial G. Ever see this before? His reaction is instant and visceral. He recoils as if you've shown him a snake. Where did you get that? He breathes, his face ashen. It was found at the scene, in an apron with the accelerant. O'Connell gets up and starts pacing the small room, agitated. It's George's, Alistair's father. He gave me those cufflinks 20 years ago, a gift for my 10th anniversary at the theater. I lost one of them years back, but I kept the other one, for sentimental reasons. So it's yours? Yes, it's mine. I kept it in my locker at the theater, in my apron pocket. I cleaned out my locker when Finch fired me, but I was so angry, so flustered, I must have left the apron behind. It's an incredible story, and it's almost believable. It explains how his cufflink ended up in the pocket of the apron used in the crime. It paints him as another victim of circumstance. The problem is, it's also the exact story a guilty person would tell to explain away a damning piece of evidence. This is a classic legal defense strategy: confession and avoidance. Yes, the evidence is mine, but here's the innocent reason it was there. It puts the burden back on you to disprove his story. You ask him where he was on the night of the fire. He tells you he was right here, in his apartment, alone. He drank half a bottle of whiskey and fell asleep in his armchair. No alibi, no witnesses, just the word of a man with a clear motive for revenge. The case against him is taking shape. Motive? Fired under a cloud of disgrace. Means? Intimate knowledge of the theater's layout and security weaknesses. Opportunity? No alibi. And now a personal item linking him directly to the container for the accelerant. But there's a nagging inconsistency. Why would O'Connell, A man who loved the theater burned it down. And why would he do it with an exotic racing fuel supplied by his friend Sam Jones? You lean on him, suggesting Jones will be caught and will likely cut a deal, pointing the finger at the mastermind. You paint a picture of O'Connell facing a life sentence. But he doesn't break. He just keeps repeating, "I didn't do it. I love that place." There's an ongoing debate in criminal psychology about the nature of arson motives. While insurance fraud and revenge are common, a less understood motive is vanity or hero arson, where a person sets a fire to feel important or to create a problem they can then solve. But this is the opposite. This is the destruction of something the suspect claims to love. Experts still argue whether this kind of targeted destruction can be a form of protest arson, a desperate, self-defeating act to draw attention to a perceived injustice. Could O'Connell be so blinded by his hatred for Finch that he would destroy the very thing he cherished just to hurt him? It seems psychologically off. You leave O'Connell's apartment more confused than when you arrived. You have two strong suspects. Sam Jones, the probable triggerman, is in the wind, and David O'Connell, the potential mastermind, is sitting on a story that is either the absolute truth or a brilliant lie. The physical evidence points to Jones, but the emotional core of the crime, the deep-seated grudge, belongs to O'Connell. Back at the precinct, you get a call. They've picked up Sam Jones. A state trooper found him sleeping in his car at a rest stop 100 miles north. He didn't put up a fight. He just looked tired of running. You have him. You have the man who lit the match. Now you just need to find out who told him to do it. Was it Finch, looking for insurance payout? Or was it O'Connell, seeking a twisted form of revenge? The whole case now rests on what Sam Jones is about to say.
The interrogation of Samuel Jones feels like the final act. You have him in the same sterile room where you question Finch. Jones isn't slick like the theater owner or defeated like the stage manager. He's just scared. He's a mechanic, a gearhead, not a hardened criminal. He's fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, and you know he's ready to break. You just have to apply the right pressure. You start by laying it all out for him. The gloves from the storm drain with his DNA inside, the chemical-resistant material matching the accelerant, the unique transmission fluid from his car found at the scene, the photo of him and O'Connell. You show him the mountain of evidence, making it clear that his fate is sealed. His only choice now is not if he goes down, but for how long. "We know you set the fire, Sam," you say, your voice calm. "What we need to know is why. Who put you up to it? Was it Alistair Finch? Did he pay you to torch his own theater for the insurance money?" Jones shakes his head frantically. No, it wasn't Finch. I've never even spoken to the man outside of work." "Okay," you say, sliding a photo of David O'Connell across the table. "Then it was him, your old buddy Dave. He was angry about getting fired. He convinced you to help him get even." Jones looks at the photo of his friend and his composure finally crumbles. He puts his head in his hands. Dave had nothing to do with it," he mumbles into his palms. "This was all me, my idea, my mess." You and Miller exchange a look. This isn't what you expected, a lone wolf. It doesn't fit. The crime feels too personal, too emotionally charged to be the work of a laid-off lighting tech with a 2-year grudge. "I don't believe you, Sam," you say. "The grudge wasn't yours. It was O'Connell's. He was your friend. You did this for him." "No," Jones looks up, his eyes pleading. "Dave loved that place. He talked my ear off about it for years. He would never... I did it for him, but not like you think. I did it because of what Finch did to him. I was trying to hurt Finch, to hit him where it would hurt most, his wallet." His story is that he acted alone, motivated by a misguided sense of loyalty to his wronged friend. He used his knowledge of chemicals to create a signature that couldn't be traced to him, or so he thought. He never intended for the whole building to go up. He just wanted to start a fire big enough to trigger a costly cleanup and investigation that would ruin Finch financially. It's a naive, almost childish motive, and it rings false. You're convinced he's covering for someone, but who? Finch or O'Connell? The case is at an impasse. You have a confession from the man who lit the fire, but he's claiming sole responsibility, which protects both of the other key suspects. Finch is insulated by Jones's confession, and O'Connell is painted as the unwitting catalyst. Without more, Jones will take the fall alone, and the person who may have orchestrated the whole thing will walk. You're out of leads and out of time. That's when Chen, who has been observing the interrogation from behind the one-way glass, comes to you with a radical idea. She says, "We do a scent lineup." You stare at her. A what? A scent lineup. It's controversial, but it has been used. We take scent pads from our primary suspects, place them in identical containers, and see which one Ember alerts on. Her nose is more honest than any witness. The legal standing of canine scent lineups is a fiercely debated topic. The practice involves having a dog smell an object from a crime scene and then identify a matching scent from a lineup of samples taken from different people. While proponents claim it's a valid forensic tool, courts have been skeptical. The issue, as critics point out, is the Sixth Amendment's Confrontation Clause. You can't cross-examine a dog. You can't ask it about its methodology or potential biases. Was the handler unconsciously leading the dog, or did the dog alert to the most interesting scent, not necessarily the correct one? Because of this, evidence from a scent lineup is rarely admissible in court as primary evidence, but it can be used to generate new leads, or in this case, to apply pressure. You're desperate, so you agree. It's a Hail Mary. You get a court order to obtain scent samples from Alistair Finch and David O'Connell. The procedure is specific. They each have to hold a sterile gauze pad in their hand for 10 minutes, transferring their unique human scent onto a pad. You also collect pads from 3 anonymous fillers, other detectives, in the precinct, to make it a fair test. You set up the lineup in a large, empty conference room. 5 identical, sanitized metal boxes are placed in a row, each containing one of the scent pads. They are spaced 10 feet apart. Chen brings Ember into the room. This time, she doesn't give the dog the apron to smell. She gives her the gloves. The gloves that Sam Jones wore. The scent on those gloves is the scent of the person who set the fire. Seek, Chen says. Ember moves down the line of boxes with the same intense focus she showed at the crime scene. She sniffs the first box, a filler, and moves on. She sniffs the second box, containing O'Connell's scent. She hesitates for a second, then moves on. Your heart thumps. She sniffs the third and fourth boxes, both fillers, with no reaction. Then she gets to the 5th box, the one containing the scent pad from Alistair Finch. Ember stops dead. Her body goes rigid. She sniffs the box once, twice, then a third time, and then she sits. It's the same passive, confident alert she used at the filing cabinet. Her tail gives a single decisive thump against the linoleum. There is no doubt in her posture. The dog is telling you that the scent of the man who wore the gloves is the same as the scent of the man who owned the theater. It's a bombshell. It turns the entire case inside out. Sam Jones confessed, but the dog is pointing at Alistair Finch. Jones must be lying. He must be covering for Finch. The motive was insurance fraud all along. You were right from the very beginning. You stride back into the interrogation room where Jones is waiting. You don't say a word. You just take the evidence bag with the single silver cufflink, the one with the G on it, and place it in front of him. "I know you're lying, Sam," you say, your voice cold as steel. "And I know who you're covering for. But there's one thing I still don't get. This. Why did Alistair Finch, a man whose first name starts with an A, use an apron with his father's cufflink in the pocket to set a fire?" You watch as Sam Jones looks at the cufflink. His face goes white. He stares at it, and a look of dawning, horrified realization spreads across his face. He starts to tremble, a deep guttural sound rising in his throat. He's not looking at you with the fear of a man caught in a lie. He's looking at you with the pure terror of a man who just realized he's been a pawn in a much, much darker game than he ever imagined. The cufflink wasn't just a random piece of evidence. It was a message, and he's finally starting to understand what it means.
The confession from Sam Jones was a lie, but not the lie you thought. The scent lineup, as legally inadmissible as it was, shattered his story and pointed a silent, furry finger directly at Alistair Finch. Now, back in the interrogation room, the sight of that single tarnished cufflink with the initial G has broken him completely. The puzzle pieces are rearranging in his mind, forming a picture far more sinister than simple insurance fraud. He told me He told me it was a joke, Jones stammers, his voice cracking. A private message for his father. You lean forward, sensing the final hidden truth is about to spill out. What are you talking about, Sam? What message? Finch hired me, Jones says, the words tumbling out in a rush. He knew about my past, my skills with chemicals. He said he needed to send a message to his father, George. He said the old man was trying to meddle in the business again, threatening to use his investor connections to force Alistair out. He painted this picture of his father as a tyrant, trying to control him from his retirement home in Florida. The story's elaborate, twisted. According to Jones, Finch's plan was never to collect the insurance money. That was just a bonus, a cover story for the police. The real goal was to stage a failed arson. Finch hired Jones to set a small, contained fire using a specific accelerant he provided. He wanted it to be discovered quickly, to look like a clumsy attempt by an amateur. He told Jones to use the old apron from the stage manager's locker and to be sure the cufflink was in the pocket. He said the cufflink was an inside joke, something only his father would understand. A way of saying, I'm in charge now. This is my theater, and I'll burn it to the ground before I let you take it back. It was supposed to be a power play, a symbolic act. But the fire wasn't small. It wasn't contained. The custom accelerant Finch provided was far more volatile than Jones realized. A small spark from a faulty wire nearby, and the whole stage went up in a flash, the flames spreading with terrifying speed. Jones barely made it out alive. Your mind is racing, connecting the dots. Finch didn't just want to commit arson. He wanted to frame his own father for it. The G cufflink, the story about a bitter family feud. It was all a setup. If the fire had gone as planned, a small, easily investigated blaze, the police would have found the apron, the cufflink, and the unique accelerant. Finch would have fed them the story about his father's meddling. It was a diabolical, but clever plan to remove his father from his life and business for good. But why? The feud story feels thin. Why go to such extreme lengths? That's when you remember the one place you haven't looked, the one place the fire thankfully didn't reach, the locked filing cabinet in the back hallway. Not the junk drawer where the apron was found, but the other drawers, the ones filled with old financial records. You send Miller back to the theater, which is still an active crime scene. You tell him to pull every file from that cabinet, every piece of paper going back 30 years. While you wait, you sit with Jones. The final piece of the puzzle is still missing. An hour later, Miller calls. His voice is tense. Harding, you're not going to believe this. I've been going through the old books from when George Finch was in charge. The ticket sales, the vendor payments, it's all standard. But I found something else. A separate ledger, tucked inside a 1995 budget report. What is it, I ask? It's a handwritten list of payments, cash, under the table, made every month for years, to the same person. Miller pauses. David O'Connell. David O'Connell, the loyal stage manager, the man who claimed Finch framed him for theft, the man whose cufflink was used as a weapon against him. He wasn't being paid for his work as a stage manager. This was something else, a secret payroll. The truth, when it finally clicks into place, is colder and more tragic than any fire. This was never about insurance money or a family feud. It was about a secret that David O'Connell held over the Finch family for decades. You bring Finch back in. This time, there's no smooth performance. When you lay out the scent lineup, Jones' full confession, and the secret ledger, he collapses. The real story comes out. 25 years ago, when Alistair was just a teenager working at the theater, there was an accident. A young stagehand fell from a lighting rig. It wasn't a catastrophic fall, but he was badly injured. George Finch, terrified of a lawsuit that would bankrupt him, didn't call an ambulance. He and the stage manager, David O'Connell, drove the boy to a clinic in the next county and paid cash. They told the boy to say he fell at home. George Finch paid for his silence for years. But O'Connell knew. He was the only other witness. And when George retired, the burden of that secret and the payments to O'Connell passed to Alistair. It was a poison pill handed down from father to son. The cash accused against O'Connell wasn't about skimming cash. It was Alistair trying to stop the blackmail, trying to sever the tie. But it backfired. O'Connell threatened to go public with the whole story. The fire was an act of pure desperation. It wasn't about burning the theater for money. It was about burning the evidence. The old ledgers, the employment records, anything that could connect O'Connell to that time, to that secret. The plan to frame his own father was a smokescreen, a layer of misdirection to hide the true motive. He was trying to burn a buried truth. In the end, it was a single, incredibly trained nose that unraveled it all. Ember, the accelerating canine, didn't just smell the fuel. She smelled the lie. Her alert on that cold steel cabinet, so far from the flames, led you away from the obvious answer and toward a secret kept for 25 years. The fire was meant to destroy the past, but all it did was illuminate it. Alistair Finch set ablaze to cover up an old crime, and in doing so, committed a new one that would finally bring him to justice. The final bitter irony, the legal event that started it all, the original accident, had long passed the statute of limitations for any legal or civil liability. The secret Finch burned his legacy to protect was already legally dead. The flickering blue and red lights eventually fade, leaving only the quiet hum of the city reclaiming the night. A story like this, born from a desperate secret and ending in a spectacle of flame and ruin, serves as a stark reminder of how the past is never truly buried. It lingers in the shadows, in the whispers between old friends, and sometimes in the scent left behind on a forgotten apron in a dusty cabinet. It shows us that the most complex crimes can hinge on the simplest things: a dog's instincts, a tarnished piece of silver, a lie told to the wrong person. The Phoenix Theater is gone, but the truth, unearthed from its ashes, will remain. Thank you for joining me on this journey tonight. These stories are a passion of mine, and sharing them with you is a privilege. If you found yourself leaning in, holding your breath, or just enjoyed the telling, a simple like or a new subscription helps his community grow in ways you can't imagine. Every comment, every share lets me know you're out there listening. I look forward to our next late night session where we'll explore another case that pushes the boundaries of belief. Until then, I hope you can find some peace in the quiet moments.